Joining me now is Congressman Greg Pence of Indiana, who is also on the Energy and Commerce Committee in Congress. Congressman, how are you doing?
Good, Joe Bob. How you doing today?
Can't complain, except for I filled up my gas tank the other day, and I don't know if you know this, but the price was astonishing.
I sure do know it's astonishing. I mean, it's been going up since the Biden administration took charge.
Yeah, so there's a big hearing on Capitol Hill today in your committee with a bunch of oil executives. I believe H.R. McMaster is also there. I just want to lay this out for you and let you kind of run with it. What is the narrative that your partners on the other side of the aisle are trying to push with this hearing, and kind of break down what the actual reality of it is?
Well, the oil companies are committing two crimes, Joe Bob. One is they're making a lot of money, and they're price gouging the consumer. Those are the two things that's coming from the Democratic Party, and yet, of course, we're pushing back on that. I like to say that the petroleum is the lifeblood of our U.S. economy, and it appears to me that the Democrats are trying to bleed us out on behalf of China. They're trying to hurt the oil companies. They have driven up the price, the Biden administration. Certainly, Ukraine is a very unfortunate and dire contribution to that. But the gasoline at the pump was up over $1 before anything happened in Ukraine. And so today, they're trying to hide, disguise, justify their actions of releasing some of the oil reserve. It's called the SPRO, Strategic Petroleum Reserve, as a way to push down prices, but that's not working. It really didn't have much of an effect. I could get into the details of that, having been in the petroleum distribution all my career. So what they're going to do is they're going to blame them for price gouging. And Joe Bob, here's what we have to be real careful of. This is an assault on capitalism as well. It's one thing to talk about the oil companies have price gouge and windfall profit taxes, which you're going to hear all over the New York Times and Los Angeles Times and the Atlantic. But they're starting with the oil companies. Then they're going to get to the healthcare industry. Then they're going to get to the farmer. Then they're going to get to everybody else that has raised their prices because of the inflation caused by the Biden administration.
Wow. Yeah, that's just kind of spreads out from there. I'm curious, you brought up the strategic petroleum reserves. I think I read somewhere that we are now at the lowest strategic oil reserve since the mid 80s. As a part of national security, is that something that we should be concerned about?
Well, it exists. The reason that we filled it up over the years, what we filled it up was about a little under $30 cost per barrel. Today, when we refill it, we're in the 90s immediately as you and I are talking, so I fill it back up. We'll be at about 40% of capacity. The purpose of the strategic oil reserve is a natural disaster that shuts down the petroleum industry, or, of course, much more importantly, a war that would temporarily shut down our production or distribution of petroleum. So we've got it there to be able to take the fight to the enemy. And so it's a wrong thing to be taking out this reserve for a catastrophe and be using it to try to push down prices. And again, it's not working, Joe Bob. It's not happening. This is the third time this administration has pulled barrels out of the strategic oil.
Now, you mentioned being an oil executive, so I'm curious on your take on this. The White House has been the last couple of weeks trying to push this idea of, well, there's 9,000 unused licenses by the oil company. Is there any validity to that, or what's actually going on there?
Well, I'll keep this real simple. If someone applies for a license or permit to drill and has given that license, then they determine whether or not there's crude, natural gas, or whatever it is under the ground. Then they have to finance it. Then once they get through that, they have to get permits then to actually do the work. So the number of permits has nothing to do with whether or not there's production available in those permits.
Sounds like they're saying everybody has a steering wheel. I don't know why they're just not driving everywhere, lacking the rest of the car. Congressman, what is your side of the aisle in this committee hearing today going to be pointed on with these oil executives?
Well, I wouldn't say we're necessarily trying to show support of the oil industry as much as point out the reality, the importance of what they do, how they provide energy every day, whether it's to light your home, to cook on your stove, to drive your truck, to deliver your goods, to drive your car to work. What they have talked about today in their opening statements was how much they have done to reduce emissions over the years. And I can tell you, having been part of that industry, I wish they'd talk about that a little more, about what their accomplishments in that area are. And they've also talked about how critical they are to a growing demand world of petroleum. You know, where it's not just the United States. These emerging countries, economies are also demanding more and more oil every day, which has an effect on price. But here in the United States, if you're going to shut down drilling, you're going to shut down distribution, you're going to force the price up.
Now, I know this is more of a long-term type of thing, but effectively on day one of the administration, they shut down yanked the licenses back to complete the Keystone XL pipeline. Is there any buzz or talk that you're hearing on the Hill about possibly restarting that, just given all of the things going on right now?
That restarting the Keystone pipeline is not as simple as it sounds. It's not like you switch flip the switch on that.
Totally.
It would have to be, a lot of the piping is gone, a lot of the permitting is gone, the investors are gone. The point of bringing that back up and maybe focusing back on that is there we have crude oil right north in Canada that we can bring into the United States down to our refineries and increase production and distribution. So I believe in the Keystone pipeline. I also believe there's a pipeline coming from Canada into the Detroit area that they want to shut that down too. So it's a broader conversation. The Keystone pipeline is an example, or it's something we hold up as, look what you did when you shut it down.
Congressman, before I let you go, anything that you would like to let people know that I'm missing or the media is missing, or anything that's poignant and needed to be talked about that we're just not talking about?
We can't allow the Democrats to push us to the electrification of the transportation industry until we're ready to go there. That's the big deal. And just trying to penalize and shut down the petroleum industry so that it forces people to buy electric cars like Pete Buttigieg wants everybody to do is a catastrophic, disastrous plan that will cost us a lot of money. And as I said, you know, if petroleum is a lifeblood of our economy, to include making plastics, rubber, everything else, cutting off or bleeding out the petroleum industry can have catastrophic effects on our economy going forward.
I just want to clarify, or at least maybe let you expand just a little bit on what you said there. Didn't sound like you're against any of these other initiative or green energy projects. It's just you can't do it immediately. Is that an accurate assessment?
As an individual that spent many years in the petroleum, within the energy distribution field, what you're saying, Joe Bob, is exactly right. I'm not opposed to windmills, solar panels, to natural gas. Yeah. I have coal in my district. We have windmills. We have solar panels. That's all fine. But you have to have enough base load or baseline power, and solar and windmills aren't there yet. Okay, the electrification transportation industry doesn't have the base load available to be distributed at this point. Yet the Democrats would like to penalize the oil industry to force us to get there quickly.
Awesome. Wow. Great perspective, Congressman. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Joe Bob.